At Novella Station, we serve drama hotter than instant noodles, ready in seconds, gone in minutes. Side effects may include uncontrollable giggles, raised eyebrows, and texting your ex just to check. Smash that subscribe button. It's the only addiction your doctor will approve. Now buckle up for the outrageous saga of Ethan, the professional procrastinator, and Catherine, the frostbite in heels. Chapter 3. The billion-dollar whim. The silence in Catherine's office was a physical weight, broken only by the frantic, silent scream of the numbers on her screen. They weren't just figures. They were an indictment. The Solstice Group, her magnificent, sprawling empire built on the corpses of failing companies, was gasping for air. The acquisitions, Starfire, the hollowed-out shell of Viridian, the legal quagmire of Nexus, were strategic masterstrokes on paper. But in reality, they were voracious parasites on her cash flow. Each one was a patient in a permanent, expensive critical care unit, draining the lifeblood of the parent company. Her CFO's latest memo was a stark warning, seared into her mind. Liquidity is at a critical threshold. A single significant, unexpected expense, or a delay in the Nexus asset liquidation, could trigger a cascade we cannot control. They were one bad week from the vultures started a circle. And Harrison Vance had the sharpest beak of all. This was the gnawing anxiety that plagued her, a constant, icy knot in her stomach that no amount of public victory could melt. It was in this state of high-strung tension that she finally turned from the damning spreadsheets, her focus shattered. Her gaze fell upon the one-way glass, seeking the source of her most confounding asset and her greatest frustration, Ethan Hayes. That afternoon, Catherine did something she never did. She stopped working. She simply sat in her office watching Ethan through the one-way glass. She wanted to see what this man actually did when he was slacking off. She was disappointed. He was a study in wasteful tranquility. For an hour, he conducted a meticulous, comparative analysis of hamburger delivery deals, his brow furrowed in concentration she'd never seen him apply to a corporate report. He then spent 30 minutes watching a compilation of fail videos, his laughter echoing faintly through the insulated wall. Now, he was fully immersed in a video game, his avatar battling a dragon while his CEO battled financial implosion. A strange, bitter frustration washed over her. Was this it? Was the genius that had saved her millions just a fluke, a happy accident born of a sarcastic, lazy mind? The disparity between the pressure she was under and the blissful ignorance he exhibited was maddening. Just then, his game character died. He made an annoyed TSK sound, closed the window, and began browsing aimlessly. He clicked on a stock market site, his internal monologue a lazy grumble. Ugh, let's see how much my pathetic portfolio has bled today. Third Eye AI, plummeting like a rock with an anvil tied to it. So much for the AI revolution. Looks more like a dumpster fire that's been doused in gasoline. Catherine's gaze was dismissive, another failing tech darling. But then his mental tone shifted. The lazy drawl sharpened into a blade. Wait a second. This is weird. The trading volume has completely dried up on the way down. That means all the small-time investors are trapped, holding the bag, too scared to sell a loss. But look, right here and here. These tiny, consistent buy orders propping up the price at key levels. That's not retail. That's a whale. A big one, building a position quietly in the chaos. Catherine leaned forward, her financial anxieties momentarily eclipsed by a hunter's instinct. Ethan continued his assessment, and the company's founders. They just collateralized all their personal shares with the banks. On the surface, it looks like they're desperate for cash, a last-ditch effort to stay afloat. But you don't do that if you think your company is dying. You do that if you're supremely confident and need liquid capital for a big play. Combine that with the secret buying. Holy crap, it's a classic short squeeze in the making. They're deliberately tanking the stock with planted bad news, forcing the panic sells, so they can hoard all the cheap shares before they announce a game changer. This thing isn't dying. It's a coiled spring. Ethan's pain was genuine, tinged with personal lament. Crap. I wish I had the cash to get in on this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime rocket ship, and I'm stuck on the ground watching it with a pair of broken binoculars. He then used the last of his personal savings to buy a handful of shares, a pitiful amount, and satisfied switched back to his video game. Inside her office, Catherine was no longer breathing. The air felt thin. Her mind, a supercomputer constantly recalculating risk and scarcity, was overloading. This wasn't a stock tip. This was a vision. This was the solution to the screaming alarm on her desk. The potential scale of the opportunity was staggering, a tidal wave of liquidity that could not only erase her cash flow crisis, but propel Solstice into a stratosphere of financial unassailability. Her movements were swift, precise, fueled by a desperate hope she dared not name. She snatched her phone, her voice low and urgent, betraying none of the seismic shift happening within. "Catherine, it's me. Drop everything. I want a full, forensic, no-holds-barred dive on a company called Third Eye AI. I want to know what they are developing behind closed doors. I want their secrets. Now, this is the absolute priority." 3 days later, a single, thin report sat centered on her otherwise immaculate desk. It felt heavier than the entire Nexus acquisition file. Its contents were staggering. Project Prometheus, a genuine, paradigm-shifting AI breakthrough in natural language processing, a months away from a public announcement that would send shockwaves through the global tech industry. The potential market cap was in the hundreds of billions. She looked through the glass. Ethan was now wrestling with a new screen protector, his tongue stuck out in concentration, utterly oblivious to the financial earthquake he had just unearthed. The sheer, careless power he wielded was terrifying. It was illogical, unreasoning. Who was he? A prophet? A corporate sleeper agent whose programming had glitched? Catherine wasn't looking at the paper. She was staring through the one-way glass, her coffee forgotten and growing cold. Her focus was on the man meticulously battling a bubbled screen protector, his tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. The victory felt hollow, eclipsed by a chilling, primal fear that slithered up her spine. This wasn't luck. This was pattern. A pattern so precise and devastating it defied all logic. Catherine's mind was a whirlwind of cold dread. Who are you, Ethan Hayes? The theories, once wild speculations, now felt terrifyingly plausible in the sterile silence of her office. Are you the heir of a rival dynasty, she wondered, sent not to spy, but to be groomed? To learn my empire from the inside out, to understand its weaknesses before you inherit the tools to dismantle it? Is this all an elaborate, long-con internship for my greatest enemy? The thought was chilling. He wasn't stealing documents. He was being given access to her very thought process. He was learning how the machine of Solstice Group ticked, not from manuals, but from the architect's own mind. A more paranoid, sinister possibility followed. Or are you a weapon? A psychic plant from Harrison Vance, or some other shadowy entity I've yet to uncover? Was this mind link not an accident, but a deployed technology? Are your insights merely carefully curated intelligence, fed to you to guide my decisions, to make me dependent, to steer my company onto the rocks for a hostile takeover I won't see coming until it's too late? Her prized logic, the fortress of her intellect, was useless here. It could not process this variable. It could not quantify a man who produced billion-dollar insights between failed screen protector applications and fast food reviews. The fear was not of his laziness, but of his potential. He was an iceberg, and the foolish, sarcastic slacker she interacted with was merely the visible tip. Beneath the surface lay a hidden, awe-inspiring power capable of changing the entire game with an offhand thought. A power she could not control, could not predict, and could not comprehend. He was the ultimate unsecured variable in her perfectly calculated world, and that made him the most dangerous person she had ever met. Ethan oblivious to the churning of radical ideas in his boss's mind, though this stupid screen protector is all bubbles. I look like an amateur. Man, why is the Ice Queen staring? Is she finally going to confess her undying love for my devastatingly handsome and surprisingly insightful self? I mean, it tracks. A woman can only resist this for so long. Ethan's hands fumbling with the stubborn screen protector, No, no, no. Not another bubble. This is a disaster. A professional should be doing this. I'm a fraud. A bubble fraud. Oh God, why is she looking over here? Can she see this? Is the glass two-way? It's probably two-way. CEOs love two-way glass. It's in their contract next to must enjoy the suffering of underlings. A fresh, cold wave of panic washed over him, completely unrelated to the ruined screen protector. Ethan, his internal voice rising in pitch. She's staring. She's definitely staring. She's seen me. She knows I'm not analyzing Q3 projections. She knows I'm engaged in a losing battle with a piece of plastic. This is it. This is the excuse she's been looking for. Terminated for gross incompetence in screen-related matters. There goes my bonus. That beautiful, life-altering, double-sized bonus. I was going to use it to finally pay off that one credit card that's been judging me for 3 years. I was going to buy the good coffee for my apartment. Now I'll be lucky to afford instant ramen. All because of this stupid, traitorous bubble. He tried to smooth it out, his movements becoming more frantic. Maybe if I just look incredibly focused, like this is a critical company-issued task. Optimizing device interface clarity and durability. Yeah, that sounds like a real thing. Does she buy it? Her face is a stone. A beautiful, terrifying bonus withholding stone. Come on, Hayes, think. Abort mission. Pretend you're just inspecting it for dust. Yes, I am a meticulous inspector of corporate assets. He held the phone up to the light, squinting with what he hoped was an expression of quality assurance, his heart hammering against his ribs. The fate of his bonus, and therefore his entire financial and emotional well-being, felt inextricably tied to this single, flawed piece of adhesive plastic. And just like that, the chilling fear evaporated, replaced by the familiar, almost comforting urge to march over and confiscate his chair along with his hairs. She pressed the intercom. He entered, a look of mild panic on his face, likely expecting a reprimand for the screen protector fiasco. She said nothing, simply sliding the third eye report across the polished oak. As he read it, his face morphed into a masterpiece of pure, gut-wrenching agony. No, it's real. Project Prometheus is real. I was right. I had the winning lottery ticket in my hand, and I only bought a single scratch-off. I could have been rich. I could have been drinking mojitos on my private beach, naming my yachts after Roman gods. My sports car. My life of leisurely napping. This is a tragedy, a cosmic injustice. Catherine watched his internal meltdown, the silent, theatrical screams of a man watching a fortune evaporate before his eyes. And in that moment, the final, crucial piece of the puzzle clicked into place. He wasn't a mastermind. He was a chaos-producing oracle, a lottery ticket with a sarcastic mouth and no idea of his own value. The relief was so profound it was almost dizzying. "Catherine, your take?" she asked, her voice deceptively calm. A frantic, brilliant, and utterly selfish plan forming in Ethan's mind. This is the jackpot, the motherlode. We have to go all in. Mortgage the company. Sell the office furniture. Empty the pension fund. I can't believe my genius. Okay, play it cool, Hayes. I'll tell her it's too risky, that we should wait. Then I'll take out every loan I can get, max out every credit card, and put every single penny I can beg, borrow, or steal in buying a third eye. Once the news breaks and I'm richer than her, I'll quit in a blaze of glory. I'll buy the office building and charge a rent. Huh, my destiny is mine. Ethan said aloud, with feigned, solemn gravitas. Ms. Pierce, I've given it considerable thought. I believe we should wait and see. The price is already inflated on speculation. Other big players are likely sniffing around. It's too risky. Let them fight it out first, and we can swoop in for the pieces later. Catherine looked at the man in front of her. So pleased with his own cleverness, he was practically popping mental champagne corks. She slowly picked up her phone, her gaze never leaving his. She pressed a single button, calling the investment department. "Catherine, Mark? It's Catherine. I want you to initiate Operation Midas. Buy shares of Third Eye AI. Immediately. Use every single dollar of our available capital. Liquidate the low-yield bonds. Pause the non-essential infrastructure upgrades. I want every cent we can legally mobilize in this stock. No upper limit. She paused, letting the magnitude of the order, an order that would either save the company or bury it, hang in the air. Her gaze was a physical weight on Ethan's horrified, frozen face. Catherine, and one more thing, Mark. Notify HR. Ethan Hayes' performance has been exemplary. Double his bonus this month. Then, draft a new 3-year special talent retention contract for him. A breach of contract penalty. She let the silence stretch. Let's set it at $80 million. The moment the head of HR, smiling like a shark that just scented blood, slid the contract across the table, Ethan felt his soul detach from his body and begin slowly floating towards the ceiling. The numbers on the page swam before his eyes. 3-year term. Breach of contract penalty. 80 million. Ethan mind let out a silent scream. 80 million? They might as well have written indentured servitude in bold, red letters. This isn't a contract. It's a hostage situation with a signing bonus. 3 years. I'll be old. My best slacking years gone. Wasted in corporate bondage. This woman didn't just build a company. She built a private prison with a better dental plan. He stared at the pen in his hand, imagining throwing it down and delivering a scathing speech about freedom and dignity. He saw himself storming out, a rebel against the machine. But then his eyes, traitors that they were, snuck another glance at the clause just above the penalty. Compliance will be a primary factor in determining a substantial monthly performance bonus. And he remembered the $60,000 about to hit his bank account. The rebellion in his heart sputtered and died, replaced by the cold, hard calculus of a pragmatist. A sigh of defeat escaped. Okay, Hayes. Let's be rational. A smart man knows when to fold. What's 3 years? It'll fly by. It's not like I had any other groundbreaking life plans besides maybe mastering that new video game. And the work. Let's be honest, the work is a joke. I get paid a fortune to be a professional bystander who occasionally thinks really hard about stuff. He clutched at a final, desperate straw of hope. A new fantasy blossoming in his fertile, imaginative compost. And this third eye thing. She's going to make billions. Billions. She can't possibly take all that credit for herself. She knows it was my juju that led her to it. I'm the architect of this windfall. Once those profits roll in, she'll have to give me a cut. A finder's fee. An oracle's royalty. A modest 1 or 2% of a few billion is still more money than I can conceive of. I'll be set for life. This contract isn't a prison sentence. It's just the waiting room before my well-deserved, massive payout. She'll see. She'll have to. With the grim determination of a man, signing his own death warrant, but secretly believing he's found a secret escape clause, he scrawled his name on the dotted line. The $80 million penalty was no longer a threat. It was just a number on the long, winding road to his future yacht. For Catherine Pierce, the days following the all-in bet on Third Eye AI were a special kind of corporate hell. The act of moving nearly every liquid asset Solstice had into a single, volatile stock based on the mental musings of her sarcastic assistant felt like a form of insanity. Her stomach was a tight, churning knot of acid and anxiety. Every time her phone buzzed with a market alert, her heart would stutter, brace for the headline that would spell their ruin. Third Eye AI implicated in fraud, or SEC launches investigation into Third Eye. She lived on pins and needles, her every sense heightened to the whispers of the market. She watched the stock ticker like a hawk, her knuckles white as the price fluctuated, each minor dip feeling like the beginning of the fatal plunge. This wasn't a calculated risk anymore. It was a high-stakes gamble, and the dice were still spinning in the air. The weight of every employee's job, her father's legacy, her entire empire, rested on the whims of a man who thought about cheesecake with the same intensity he gave to financial fraud. And through her office wall, she could hear the architect of her potential downfall. He was a study in serene indifference. While her world narrowed to a single stock symbol, has expanded to encompass new levels of digital conquest and snack-based exploration. The sound of his keyboard clacking wasn't from frantic research. It was from achieving a new high score. The pust of a soda can opening was a celebratory gunshot for another level beaten. He'd wander out to the executive pantry, returning with an armful of gourmet chips and artisanal sodas, blissfully coasting through the days as if he hadn't indirectly convinced her to mortgage the entire company. There were moments, watching him through the glass, laughing at a meme or meticulously organizing his desk toys, when a wave of pure, unadulterated fury would wash over her. She wanted to stride into his office, sweep the snacks off his desk, and shake him by the shoulders. Catherine wanted to scream at this infuriating man. Do you feel anything? Do you have any concept of the precipice we're standing on? Are you even capable of feeling fear? Or is that part of your brain occupied by an encyclopedic knowledge of fast food menus? My entire life's work is balancing on the house of cards you built in your head, and you're debating the merits of sea salt versus vinegar chips. The cognitive dissonance was maddening. The same mind that could effortlessly deconstruct a multi-layered corporate conspiracy was now fully dedicated to finding the most comfortable way to slouch in a chair. He was chaos incarnate, a force of nature she had willingly let into her boardroom, and now all she could do was watch the weather report and pray the coming storm was the one that brought rain to the parched earth, and not the one that washed her entire world away. The explosion of Third Eye, AI, didn't just make money. It forged a legend. Overnight, Catherine Pierce was no longer a rising star or a ruthless CEO. She was a titan. The profits that flooded into Solstice Group were so vast they were spoken of in terms usually reserved for small national budgets. The company's market capitalization doubled, then solidified into a figure that placed it among the global behemoths, an unassailable fortress of capital. Solstice was no longer a player in the game. It was the house, and everyone else was betting with its chips. The frenzy was immediate and overwhelming. The switchboard at Solstice headquarters was lit up like a Christmas tree. Her public email address became a digital monument to desperation, flooded with thousands of requests. Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, every major financial publication was pleading for an exclusive. Business channels ran speculative segments around the clock, their anchors dubbing her the Cassandra of capital, the prophet of profit, and most popularly, the woman who sees tomorrow. The pressure became so immense that Sarah, who could manage Catherine's impossible schedule with the precision of a nuclear submarine captain, was finally overwhelmed. The PR department had to formally intervene, creating a triage system for interview requests and issuing a statement that Ms. Pierce was currently focused on strategic integration and would not be giving interviews. Through it all, Catherine remained a statue of calm. She accepted the adulation with a graceful, distant nod, her expression never betraying the profound, private absurdity of it all. Cameras flashed, capturing the image of the unflappable genius who had seen $100 billion secret hidden in plain sight. Only she knew the truth. She was no god. She was no prophet. She was a boss who had been led to the single greatest financial victory of her career by following the whims of a quirky employee who had been more concerned with the bubble and his screen protector than the billions on the line. The media painted her as a visionary who had perceived a hidden pattern in the chaos of the market. In reality, she had simply learned to listen to the chaos in the office next door. The real genius, the true oracle, was currently using his state-of-the-art, company-issued computer to argue with a stranger on the internet about whether a hot dog was a sandwich, his only concern for the day being the dwindling supply of yuzu clementine soda in the pantry. And as the world hailed her as a financial deity, Catherine Pierce, titan of industry, allowed herself a single private thought. If they only knew. Ethan, having missed his personal rocket ship by a day, sat in his office, staring at the meager gains from his handful of shares and silently weeping over the fleet of yachts and Mediterranean villas that had vanished into the ether. It's all her fault. She has a heart of compressed coal. She saw my genius, and she caged it. That $80 million penalty is a shackle on my future fortune. Catherine, listening to his bitter, internal lament while sipping the exquisite, perfectly brewed coffee he had made for her that morning, found a combination exceptionally satisfying. The lifeline had been caught. The oracle was securely chained to the deck. And for the first time in a long time, the future wasn't a precarious tightrope, but a wide-open horizon. Chapter 4. The fall of First Domino. The acquisition of Viridian Dynamic was a move of quiet, surgical brilliance. On the surface, it was another failing asset absorbed by the Solstice behemoth. But for Catherine Pierce, it was the key turning a lock she had been waiting to open for months. By owning Viridian, she became the de facto, legally binding partner of Nebula Innovations, the joint venture Tristan Croft had used to funnel Harrison Vance's money into Nexus Dynamics. This partnership granted her certain rights to the core patents Nexus was built upon. But owning the blueprints and building the machine were two different things. A messy, public legal battle over their commercial use would tie her up in courts for years, draining resources and momentum. She needed a cleaner solution. So, she waited. She had studied the anatomy of Croft's House of Cards, as Ethan had so aptly described it, and knew it was built on a foundation of whispers and perceived confidence. The moment that confidence shattered, the architect would come crawling. She didn't have to wait long. "Miss Pierce." Sarah's voice was uncharacteristically sharp as she burst into the office, her tablet held like a shield. "There's a problem. Our plan to file the whistleblower report on Nebula. It's been compromised. The details haven't leaked, but the intent has. Half a dozen investment firms and 2 major news outlets are making discreet inquiries, asking if we're preparing a legal offensive against Nebula." Catherine's gaze remained steady, but her mind raced. This was a calculated leak, a preemptive strike. From his customary spot on her sofa, where he was supposedly reviewing market data but was actually browsing custom gaming PC builds, Ethan snorted softly. A lazy, internal drawl echoed in her mind. And there's the flailing. Right on schedule. Croft is like a kid who just realized the pool is full of piranhas and he can't swim. He's splashing around, trying to muddy the water so no one can see him drown. He's hoping the big, bad shark, Harrison Vance, will swoop in and fish him out. Poor, deluded idiot. His mental voice took on a tone of cold, analytical certainty. Old man Vance won't be coming to the rescue. Not this time. He's a predator, not a philanthropist. He backed Croft for the patents and the hype. Now that the Nexus facade is crumbling and we're sitting on a mountain of cash from the Third Eye miracle, his leverage is gone. He can't topple us. All he has left are underhanded tricks, leaks, whispers, corporate espionage. Annoying, but not fatal to a tree with roots as deep as ours now. Vance has already started cutting ties. I bet my bonus he's quietly forcing Clayton Investments out of his umbrella, sacrificing a pawn to protect his king. Catherine listened, the chaotic pieces of the puzzle snapping into a clear, terrifying picture in her mind. Ethan wasn't just predicting moves. He was reading the entire board, understanding the motivations of players she had been fighting for years. 2 days later, the call came. Tristan Croft, his voice a strained imitation of its former smarmy confidence, proposed a deal. He offered to sell Solstice a 20% stake in Nebula Innovations for a mere $50 million, a fraction of its perceived value, a desperate fire sale concession. To any other CEO, it would have looked like a gift, a chance to grab a strategic asset for pennies. Catherine might have been tempted, but as she relayed the offer to Ethan, his internal monologue erupted into a masterclass in corporate treachery, his mental voice sharpening into a blade. 50 million? It's not a concession, it's bait. A poison apple. He's not selling us a steak, he's selling us a noose. The second we sign that deal, he'll run to every bank and investor on the planet, proclaiming that the legendary Catherine Pierce and the Solstice Group are now backing Nebula Innovations. He'll use our name as collateral to secure massive loans, propping up his failing empire with our reputation. His paced mentally through the scheme like he himself designed it. Then the real magic happens. He'll funnel that cash through a dozen shell companies in the Caymans, cook the books to show catastrophic losses on ongoing projects, and vanish. And who will be left holding the bag, liable for 20% of all the cumulative, fabricated debt? Us. He's not just trying to save himself. He's trying to build a financial IED and strap it to our leg on his way out. And the Clayton Investments move? That's Vance making sure the blast doesn't reach him. He's clearing the debris field. Catherine sat in silence, the full, breathtaking audacity of the plot laid bare. It was a thing of sinister beauty, a final, vicious hail Mary designed not just to escape, but to maim his pursuer on the way out. There was a time, not long ago, when such an insight from Ethan would have left her dumbfounded, her heart hammering with a mixture of awe and fear. Now, she simply felt a strange, numb acceptance. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a profound realization. Trying to measure her own hard-won business acumen against his was like a skilled cartographer trying to argue with a force of nature that had just redrawn the coastline. She was a master of the game, a titan who had earned her place through relentless work and sharp intellect. But he operated on a different plane entirely. Mortals and gods, she mused, were simply in two different leagues. A cold, predatory smile touched her lips as she looked at the phone. Tristan Croft was still on the line, waiting for her answer. "Tristan," she said, her voice as smooth and cold as polished ice. "Your offer is interesting, but Solstice doesn't buy liabilities. We acquire assets. And you, I'm afraid, have become the former." She hung up, the quiet click echoing her finality. The serpent had shown its fangs, and the titan had simply decided not to step into its strike zone. The game, she knew, was already over. The silence in Catherine's office was a living thing, thick and heavy with the ghosts of the past. It was in these quiet moments, when the relentless hum of the present faded, that the memories rushed in, vivid and sharp as broken glass. She remembered her father, Alexander Pierce, not the broken man he became, but the vibrant visionary who had built Solstice from a garage workshop into an industry contender. She remembered the light in his eyes when he explained an engineering problem, the warmth of his hand on her shoulder. And she remembered watching that light gutted and die, snuffed out by a relentless, calculated assault. Harrison Vance. The name was a curse she'd carried for a decade. He wasn't just a business rival. He was a predator. He had seen her father's integrity as a weakness, his innovation as a threat. With a pack of cronies and sycophants, he had launched a war of attrition. He stole patents, poached key employees, and spread vicious and proven rumors that eroded investor confidence like acid. And one of his most effective attack dogs had been Tristan Croft. Even then, Croft had been all slick charm and hollow promises. He was the one who had personally delivered Vance's most devastating ultimatums, who had stood in this very building, her father's sanctuary, and coolly outlined the terms of his surrender with a smirk that didn't reach his cold eyes. Catherine, just a teenager, had watched from the doorway, her fists clenched, her heart hammering with a helpless rage she could not articulate. She had watched her father's shoulders slump, the hope drained from his face, replaced by a weary despair that deepened into a clinical depression from which he never emerged. His death certificate may have listed a heart attack, but Catherine knew the true cause, a broken spirit systematically shattered by Harrison Vance. That day, the girl she had been died, and something harder, colder, was forged in her soul. Her youth became a currency she spent without hesitation. While her friends were dancing in clubs, she was dissecting balance sheets. While they were falling in love, she was learning the art of corporate warfare. While they were planning weddings and christenings, living full, messy, human lives, she was a caged animal in a gilded prison of her own making, its bars made of stock reports, and its locked the single, all-consuming goal of revenge. She had built Solstice into a weapon, a monument to her father's memory, and a blade sharpened for one purpose: to destroy Vance and everyone who had helped him. For years, the path had seemed impossibly long, the enemy fortress unassailable. She had resources, yes, but Vance was entrenched, protected by layers of legal armor and a reputation that intimidated the entire financial world. Then, The universe, in its infinite and bizarre irony, had provided her with Ethan Hayes. And the key, the ability to hear his thoughts, was not just a strategic advantage. It was a divine intervention, a supernatural gift bestowed upon her for this singular purpose. His chaotic, brilliant, uncannily accurate mind was the master key to every lock Vance had ever built. Ethan saw the hidden cracks in the foundation, the invisible threads connecting the puppets to the master. He was the ultimate weapon, delivered to her doorstep disguised as a slacker in a flannel shirt. Now, Tristan Croft was cornered. His house of cards was trembling, and the first domino was poised to fall. This wasn't just business anymore. This was justice. This was catharsis. A slow, cold smile, devoid of any warmth, spread across Catherine's face. It was a smile her father would never have recognized. It was the smile of the avenger he never wanted his daughter to become. She looked through the one-way glass. Ethan was, as usual, blissfully unaware. He was trying to balance a pen on his nose, failing, and then laughing at his own failure. He saw a game. He saw a puzzle. But she saw the end game. This was no longer just about saving Solstice or making a profit. The toppling of Tristan Croft was the first crucial domino. His public disgrace would be a tremor through Vance's empire, shaking loose other weak links, exposing other vulnerabilities. It would be the proof that the Titan could be wounded. Ethan's genius would be the catalyst, but the vengeance would be hers alone. She would use his mind to dismantle the world that had broken her father, brick by brick, until Harrison Vance had nothing left but the echoing silence of his own ruin. The caged animal was finally, after all these years, being unleashed. The silence stretched for days, thick and unnerving. In the high-stakes game Catherine was playing, silence was never a good sign. It meant the opponent was moving in the shadows, plotting an escape route she couldn't see. Tristan Croft's abject desperation should have had him pounding on her door, begging for a lifeline. Instead, there was nothing. This calm was a subtle poison, seeping into the edges of her focus, making the weight unbearable. She could no longer stand the quiet. Pressing the intercom, her voice was clipped. "Ethan, my office. Now." Like a dutiful, if irreverent, page boy, he arrived promptly. But true to form, his first stop was not her desk, but the small, attached kitchenette. With a ritualistic care she had come to both rely on and resent, he measured out the beans from his personal stash, the expensive Jamaican Blue Mountain, and began the process of brewing a fresh pot. The rich, aromatic scent filled the space, a stark contrast to the tension in the room. She and Sarah waited in a patient, practiced silence, the unspoken understanding that the Ethan Hayes briefing could not commence until the caffeine offering was complete. Finally, he placed the steaming porcelain mug before her with a quiet click and took his position, standing attentively behind her chair, a silent sentinel. Catherine took a deliberate sip. The perfect coffee is small, steadying comfort. She kept her gaze on Sarah, who stood poised with her tablet. "Any news on Tristan Croft or Nebula Innovations?" Catherine asked, her tone deceptively casual. But her entire consciousness was turned inward, a satellite dish finely tuned to a single, chaotic frequency. She didn't need Sarah's answer. She was waiting for his. And Ethan did not disappoint. A lazy internal monologue cutting through the silence. What's she so twitchy about? The guy's radio silence isn't a strategy, it's a panic attack. He's not building a master plan. He's scrambling for a lifeboat. Probably looking for some overseas sucker with more money than sense. A foreign investor who doesn't know the local landscape. Catherine's grip on her mug tightened slightly. An overseas buyer. It was a possibility, one that could complicate things immensely. But then his mental voice shifted, becoming infused with a knowing confidence. "Ethan, joke's on him. My cousin at the finance ministry was just complaining about the new regulatory overhaul. The FDI rules are about to be tightened like a drum. They're implementing a full, forensic vetting process for any major foreign investment. They'll tear Nebula's financials apart and find the rot in about 5 minutes. Tristan's not a mastermind. He's a sitting duck waiting for the hunters to get their new licenses." A wave of cold, clear understanding washed over Catherine. The path forward, once shrouded in the fog of Croft's silence, was now illuminated with brutal clarity. Ethan already moving to the next logical, ruthless step thought, and since we already have a foot in the door with our Viridian stake, why not kick the damn thing down? Clayton Investments is like an orphan now that Vance kicked them to the curb. They're desperate to offload their nebulous stake before it becomes completely worthless. We can acquire their shares for pennies on the dollar. But first, a predatory, mental grin echoed in his thoughts. Ethan, we just need to light the fuse. A carefully placed leak to a tech blog. Rumors that a rival firm, maybe even a mysterious new player, is weeks away from launching a revolutionary, open-source data compression format that would make Nebula's entire patent portfolio obsolete. Poof! There goes the last shred of their value. Clayton will be begging us to take the shares, and Tristan's last escape route will be sealed shut. Checkmate. Catherine set her coffee down with a quiet, final sound. The plan was laid out before her, not on a presentation slide, but in the invisible waves of a slacker's subconscious. It was diabolical. It was perfect. She looked at Sarah, her own expression now one of icy resolve. "Forget waiting for Croft," she stated, her voice flat and decisive. "Sarah, I want two things. First, have our broker reach out to Clayton Investments. Express cautious interest in their nebulous stake. Lowball them. Make it sound like a pity offer." Sarah's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded, typing swiftly. Secondly, Catherine continued, a faint, cold smile touching her lips. "It's time we introduced a little uncertainty into the market. Have our contacts at Tech Pulse Daily run a speculative piece. The subject, the impending obsolescence of proprietary data compression models. Be evocative." As Sarah hurried out to execute the orders, Catherine leaned back in her chair. She didn't look at Ethan, still standing dutifully behind her. She simply picked up her coffee and took another sip, the rich flavor tasting like victory. The sitting duck was in their sights, and her oracle had just handed her the shotgun. Sarah has been noting the changes for a while now. From her desk in the antechamber, Sarah watched the rhythms of power. In the last few months, those rhythms had changed. The change was subtle, a shift in the tectonic plates beneath the foundation of Solstice Group, and it all seemed to revolve around the enigma named Ethan Hayes. The most glaring anomaly was the coffee ritual. Before, Catherine Pierce was a force of nature compressed into human form. In meetings, she was a prosecuting attorney, firing questions in rapid succession, poking holes in logic, using the collective and often terrified intelligence of her executives to crowdsource a solution. Urgency was her native language. Now, she would summon Ethan, and the world would stop. Sarah had seen Catherine, in the middle of a call about a potential multi-billion-dollar partnership, hold up a finger for silence because Ethan had entered with the coffee tray. She would watch, a silent spectator, as her boss, a woman for whom time was a more valuable currency than cash, would sit with an unnerving patience while Ethan fussed with the grinder, the kettle, the porcelain. It was a sacrament, and he was the high priest of caffeine. The most urgent crisis was put on hold for the perfect brew. Then came the briefing. Catherine would ask questions, listen to explanations with a focused intensity. But the decisions that followed were dissonant. It was as if Catherine was listening to a second, hidden conversation, and it was that one she was actually heeding. The disconnect was never more apparent than it was right now. Sarah had just presented a comprehensive, logical plan, leveraged the upcoming charity gala. It was the perfect, low-pressure environment to corner a desperate Tristan Croft. The soft lights, the social pressure, the inability to make a scene, it was a classic, effective corporate maneuver. Catherine had listened, nodded, and taken a slow sip of the coffee Ethan had just delivered. Then, she had laid out a completely different, far more aggressive strategy. Go after the orphan Clayton Investments and unleash a destabilizing rumor into the tech world. It was a brilliant move, Sarah had to admit. A masterstroke that cut off Croft's escape and acquired assets on the cheap. But it hadn't come from her. It hadn't come from any of the highly paid strategists or market analysts. It felt borrowed, and that was the gnawing suspicion that had been eating at Sarah for weeks. These sudden, inexplicable, and devastatingly accurate strategic pivots, the uncanny knowledge of hidden market regulations, the preemptive strikes on rivals' secret weaknesses, the almost prophetic timing. Her eyes drifted to the closed door of Catherine's office, behind which Ethan Hayes was presumably doing whatever it was he did all day. She remembered the first day he'd been promoted, a bewildered man in a cheap shirt. Now he was the constant, silent shadow. He never offered advice in meetings. He never presented a report. He just made coffee and existed. And yet, every time he left the room after one of his silent visitations, Catherine's eyes would gain a new, sharp glint, and she would issue a command that would alter the company's trajectory. It was him. The thought was absurd, illogical. He was a slacker, a glorified errand boy with a bafflingly high salary. But the correlation was undeniable. He was the only new variable. The coffee ritual was the catalyst. The bizarre, disjointed decisions were the result. Sarah didn't know how. Was he whispering to her when her back was turned? Passing her notes? It seemed impossible, but the evidence was piling up. Catherine Pierce, the most formidable and self-reliant CEO she had ever known, was somehow, inexplicably, taking her strategic cues from the most unassuming man in the building. In that, Sarah realized as she turned back to her screen to initiate the ruthless plan against Clayton, was the most terrifying and fascinating power dynamic she had ever witnessed. Ethan's playbook, delivered via Catherine's execution, worked with the chilling precision of a Swiss watch. In the rarefied air of global finance, Catherine Pierce's word was no longer just a promise. It had become a sovereign bond, rock solid, unquestionable, and immensely valuable. And while she cultivated no friendships, she commanded a legion of obliging allies, especially when the task was as simple as spreading a rumor. After all, whispering on the wind was not, in itself, a crime. A few days later, at a crowded tech conference after-party, the catalyst emerged. A senior programmer from a renowned and entirely unrelated Silicon Valley firm, fortified by one too many free cocktails, loudly lamented to a reporter about his groundbreaking work. He slurred about a revolutionary, open-source compression algorithm his team was perfecting, one that could handle 4K video with a 30% reduction in size, rendering all these proprietary, license-heavy models completely obsolete. The reporter, sensing a story far juicier than the event's press release, ran with it. The article dropped at 8 a.m. By 8:15, the already shaky foundations of Nebula Innovations were visibly crumbling. The stock, which had been on life support, went into freefall. The one asset Tristan Croft had, the perceived value of his patent portfolio, had just been publicly declared a future relic. The change at Clayton Investments was immediate and stark. The executives who had days earlier scoffed at Solstice's pity offer, deriding it as a vulture's move, were now on the phone, their voices strained with a newfound, desperate courtesy. They weren't just willing to sell. They were eager to offload their 22% stake in Nebula for even less than the previously lowballed offer, desperate to salvage any scrap of capital from the impending inferno. Panic, once a theoretical concept for Tristan Croft, was now his full-time reality. Sarah's phone, which usually fielded calls from assistants and secretaries, began to light up with his direct, private number. The calls were a study in deteriorating composure. First, a strained attempt at authority, then bargaining, and finally, barely concealed hysteria. The CEO of a once promising tech darling was now jumping around like a kernel of corn on a hot skillet, his every move fueled by sheer, undiluted fear. Meanwhile, on the top floor of Solstice Tower, the atmosphere was one of surreal tranquility. While Tristan combusted, Catherine was savoring another caffeine offering from Ethan. He placed the mug before her with his usual silent ceremony. The rich aroma of the exclusive beans a stark contrast to the financial bloodsport unfolding in the market. She took a slow, appreciative sip, her gaze calm as she watched the real-time ticker of Nebula's stock on a secondary monitor. Life in the top executive floor seemed to be in low gear, a placid lake's surface hiding the terrifying, deep-water currents below, as if the solstice was slowing down, unbothered about unfolding situation of nebula dynamics. The decreased, audible momentum was an illusion. The ship of the solstice group was not just sailing. It was a ghost ship cutting through the water at a terrifying, silent pace, leaving a wake that capsized smaller vessels. It wasn't just the executives and employees of Solstice and its subsidiaries watching with bated breath. The entire business world had become a captivated audience. Competitors scrambled, tried to assemble a counter-strategy, but it was like trying to build a raft in the middle of a hurricane. Solstice's position was now unassailable. Owning Viridian's 20% stake had given them a foot in the door. Acquiring Clayton's 22% stake at a fire sale price was like kicking the entire door down. The 42% total gave them a controlling, dominant influence that was almost impossible to catch up to. There was a final, sputtering attempt at resistance from the old guard. Harrison Vance, seeing his carefully laid plans unraveling, tried to rein in Clayton, to remind them of past loyalties. But the message fell on deaf ears. Having been already kicked to the curb by Vance to avoid fallout, the upper brass at Clayton felt no allegiance to their former master. Faced with the cold, hard reality of total loss versus a Solstice-led exit, they caved. Completely. As Sarah relayed the news of Clayton's unconditional surrender, Catherine didn't smile. She simply gave a single, slow nod, her eyes meeting Ethan's for a fleeting moment. He was looking out the window, seemingly bored. But in that quiet, a silent message passed between them, the strategist and his utterly oblivious instrument. The first major battle was over. The war for vengeance, however, had just begun.